And when we get down 5 seconds, I'm gonna gavel us in, okay? At 5. All right. We are going to call the meeting to order this evening. Good evening and welcome to the Town of Sykesville Mayor and Town Council meeting. Today is Monday, August 22nd, 2022, and we will call the meeting to order at 7 p.m. This meeting is also being streamed live to Carroll Media Center's YouTube channel, as well as the town's Facebook, and will be available for playback. We begin our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moment of silence, please. Thank you. This is the time of our agenda where I ask if anyone is here to provide a public comment. If so, you have 3 minutes to do so. No interested parties, will move on. With the approval of the minutes from our July 11th, 2022 Mayor and Town Council meeting, everyone, I assume, has gotten a chance to review those. Any comments or corrections requested?
Motion to approve the minutes from July 11th, 2022.
Second. Presley, and thank you so much, Councilman Schofield. All in favor of approving the minutes from July 11th, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the minutes are approved unanimously. Next, I'm very excited about this, is our presentation by Chief Spalding to recognize our crossing guards. I'll let you just take it from there, and then I'll boast when you're probably going to say everything I'd like to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Come on up, sure.
All right.
Get all the recognition over here.
This is my Central Avenue neighborhood champions here. Yeah.
I gotta say, they were both reluctant to be here. They're the type that don't want any recognition, which is admirable, but I really felt like they've stepped up so big and helped us in so many ways that we really had to make it a point to at least give them some very brief recognition. So I do have some certificates here for you, presenting for both of you for your outstanding support to the Sykesville Police Department during 2021. We're truly grateful for you answering the call to service and volunteering to be a school crossing guard during 2021. Commitment to service has resulted in the safe passage of many children to and from school, as well as allowing us to better allocate our police resources to police officers to other duties. We sincerely thank you. James? Who says the same thing, Doug? But Doug Vlog. I really mean what I say when I thank you, and the fact that each and every time you're there, this allows our police officers to do other things. I won't say more important things, because getting our kids across the street is the most important thing we do, but it certainly frees us up to focus on speed enforcement and things of that nature. So it's a team effort. We're glad to have you on board. You've both committed to working with us again this year.
Awesome.
Starts in just a few weeks.
I'd never miss a chance. So if I
Please.
can say a couple words. First of all, the kids are absolutely great. And the parents are good too. So it's a great way to get out and put your eyes and ears to the community. Occasionally, some of the teacher aides walk by and they say a few words. So I must say it's a great way to get me up early. As a retiree, that's important. So thanks so much, folks. It's fun.
Good.
Thank you.
Jane, thank you so much. You and Doug both for filling a role that we've been crying out for many years, actually. And to have answered that call for us, I really appreciate it.
Yeah. I agree with Jane that the children last year were all very respectful and nice, and they joked around. But they weren't jerks at all.
That's nice to hear.
Good to hear.
And most of the parents were trying to wave them through. They always stopped.
They know who to listen to.
There was never any real issue.
Yeah.
Okay.
Real good.
And I wish that we had a way to quantify how many times they worked, but this past year, since it was our first year of doing so, we didn't have a way to do that. But this year, moving forward, we've come up with a way that we can kind of keep track of how many times you're all there. So next year, when we recognize you, we'll know exactly how many
We
shifts you
started
work.
right around 2022, right?
Yeah.
It
So
was-
maybe next year there could be some food involved.
Oh, I got it. We're on it.
Absolutely.
We're on it. Yes.
If I walk in, you
Thank
gotta start talking about
Thank you. Yes, Lieutenant, that was right on cue there. Ice cream and Lieutenant Kilgore entering the room. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jane Burglar and Doug Vog. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the first item on our agenda of new business was listed and advertised as being an introduction of an ordinance, an elections ordinance. But we're actually going to postpone this agenda item until we have a chance to update our nominating process for elected officials. And we want to do that separately and prior to this discussion and this introduction, I should say, of this ordinance. So we'll just strike that, if you will, for this evening.
Can we make any comments, or would you rather just wait until?
I mean, you're certainly welcome to.
So I really like the ordinance, Joe. I want to thank you for that. The only issue I was wondering about maybe talking is the 10 votes at the end there. Each person, you could, I was hoping to get that down to 4. I'm not
This is the designated agent?
designated agent, yeah. I was just wondering where you came up with that number, or if it's.
Yeah, I mean, admittedly, it is somewhat arbitrary. Again, the whole idea of designating an agent to carry ballots back and forth from the polling place during the early voting, or I should say mail-in voting process, is somewhat of an arbitrary number. I guess it was designed to capture everybody that lives within a household. And I guess in our head it was, well, if you have a friendly neighbor who might want to help out, some of the neighbors in the area, that 10 would be a good solid number to start with.
Okay.
Outside of that, there was no real other rhyme or reason behind.
So was there any other town that had that number, or was there any other town that designated that? Because I know you looked at a couple other municipalities.
Yeah, I mean, whether or not they specifically had 10, I don't know. Some people did limit it, some people didn't limit it at all. So
Okay.
Again, it was just kind of, we're trying
Can
to find
I ask you a question? Were you thinking just to strike it, or were you thinking of a different number?
Oh, I was thinking like 4
4.
or 5.
Oh,
I mean, I think most of the places are, there's 2 kids, 2 adults. I mean, that was the
Do
only.
you want to describe what it is we're talking about for the public, since it really hasn't been introduced? And
Well,
I mean, you're talking about designated agents and the limit of your request to limit the number of registered voters that a designated agent could be assigned to, if you will, or that could be designated as the individual to not only procure or carry the mail-in ballot request form to the Board of Election Supervisors, i.e. the townhouse, and appropriate staff, and receive a mail-in ballot to be carried back to the registered voter that would deem you, that person, as the designated agent. Although
I was going to say, basically, the designated agent takes over the post office duty, basically.
in essence, it certainly does.
So that
It offers, actually, in my mind, it offers an alternative to depending on the delivery service of the U.S. Postal Service. I mean, I could share anecdotes of people not receiving their mail-in ballots despite the receipt of the request form in a timely fashion, because it was mailed to them in the last election cycle. So I think what my goal would be is to optimize voter engagement and optimize the number of participants who actually vote in our local elections, and I would rather see no limitation on it whatsoever if I had my druthers. And so that would be my feedback, that we not reduce it, but that we actually follow state legislation, which does not limit the number of registered voters per designated agent.
yeah, and my thought's very similar to yours, Stacy, is that we've seen in different places around the country alleged reduction of ability to get votes, and it'd be great if our community allowed for, didn't put these sort of artificial barriers in the way of allowing people to do it. Now, do I think that many more than 4 people or 5 people will typically do this, probably not. But maybe there's a case where, I don't know, maybe there's a disabled person that's struggling to get the information that they have, or maybe there's an elderly person that's struggling, or maybe there's another sort of person facing some sort of barrier. And if we can broaden it out so that anyone, you could have an unlimited number of, people that you could serve in that capacity. You're not influencing their vote in any way. You're just getting them a ballot. And so that's kind of my take on it as well.
Thank you. Anyone else on this thing that we've taken from the agenda?
That's all right.
Okay, so I'm sure we'll have a more of a robust conversation, perhaps at our next meeting or the meeting after that. I'm not sure when we're going to address the nomination process, but it'll be soon, and then this will
Yeah,
follow.
and it really, I guess, since we're talking about it, we might as well talk about it right now as well. But one of the things that we did identify was we were attempting to create basically a form that would also satisfy the existing nominating process within the charter. And the more we looked at it, we just realized that because the charter doesn't give the option of a form, that we really should just amend the charter to either allow for that, or we just get rid of the nominating process altogether and just allow a form that somebody could just sign up and say, okay, I would like to run for office, which is a more traditional way to get people on the ballot rather than having to go through that nominating process. So I didn't know if anybody had any strong feelings about whether or not you wanted to keep the nominating process basically as is, or have the alternative to a form for the nominating process, or if it was just, why don't we just eliminate it altogether, do just a standard form to get people on the ballot, and then move on with the elections that way.
I like the form. I mean, I think the nomination process was always
It's kind of cumbersome.
it's a little awkward, I would say.
It was old school.
Old school, yeah, very old school, very awkward.
I was going to ask, what is the history behind being nominated in order to be on the ballot? Because you have to be nominated by a registered voter.
Right.
Not to give you personal information, but I have somebody that would want to nominate me that's not a registered voter, so that kind of...
Yeah. At the end of the day, I think it was just I don't want to say an older way of doing things, but it was just a standard practice that was done years ago, and as things have evolved and elections have evolved, people have just kind of gotten away from the nominating process.
Yeah, I don't feel a need to be nominated.
Right.
And I would argue in a post-COVID world, you could say, are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? Okay, tomorrow. And then somebody rams a Q-tip up their nose and no one leaves the house, and you're standing there going, I didn't get nominated. This is something that is more standard. You can send it in weeks in advance, and they can still vote for you once they're well.
That's right. So just so everybody knows, then the charter change that you'll likely see presented at some future meeting, if not the next meeting shortly thereafter, will be changing the nominating process altogether to just allow for somebody filling out a form or some sort of designation form that says they're wanting to run for office. So.
Okay.
Thank you, Jim.
Good.
So just one other thing that I noticed in the ordinance has to do with that there's different genders that are included.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
And I don't know what people feel about in reference to it, but the passport service has moved away from gender focus, and so I wonder if we need to have a gender focus in these, or if these could be written in a way that is it's more gender neutral in nature. I don't know how people feel in reference to that.
I would support it. I mean, I think if we're updating, let's update and,
Yep.
I know there are
and be inclusive.
sections of the code that actually say anytime you see he moving forward, it is not to designate the sex of the individual in this position, and instead it's just a placeholder. And I feel like if we're going to do that, then we may as well actually make it gender neutral. So I appreciate that. Thank you, Councilman Schofield. Okay, we'll move on to new item of business number 2, which is the zoning text amendment signs. I'll just give a one-line quick summary here and then turn things over to Joe for some background. The proposed amendment is intended to remove content-based regulations from our current sign ordinance and establish rules related to temporary signage.
That's correct. So again, this was discussed, I believe it was just at our last meeting, talking about knowing that we had to tackle the sign regulations based on the Grassley amendment that was,
It's all about size.
submitted. Yeah, it was neat. But the ordinance was written mainly with the focus on the downtown historic district and applying some sort of temporary signage regulations down there. And we did attempt to remove most of the content-based regulations that were there. I will admit there's at least one section that we have identified since then, but since this is just getting referred to Planning Commission, we still have time to make some of those changes. But again, I did want to give everybody a chance to review it, make some comments, refer it to Planning Commission. You can certainly refer it with whatever instructions you want to give the Planning Commission in their review, and then obviously once they're ready to make their recommendation back to council, we'll have it for introduction and adoption.
Okay.
So I have one question on, can we,
Yes,
do we
please.
need to open it for discussion?
If it's questions for staff, no. If it's ready for a motion and you want to...
No, I want to discuss the,
Okay,
I have
please.
a question on the,
Yep.
and I'm looking for it right now. In towards the end, and I honestly got lost because there's so many sections in this. So it might not be applicable, but there was a discussion about like things needing to be fixated or on a, no sign shall be permitted, number 10C. No sign shall be permitted in any district that does not have a fixed location, but not necessarily a permanent location on the ground or on a building, including mobile type signs so construed as to be mounted on a pre-assembled vehicle or other device and designed to be movable by means of attached wheels or similar devices. Mm-hmm. So, how does that affect a protest sign?
Well, these are signs that require zoning certificates. Those are specific.
Those are that's where I was lost.
That's a
Okay.
specific regulation that requires a zoning certificate.
If it's going to be permanent, thank you.
Correct.
Then I have no questions.
So I guess I do have a question about zoning certificates because I wonder about government overreach in reference to the need for certificates, and I have issues with para 5 under section C, which I understand the intent of it, is that we don't want people to have whatever they want in their window in different locations. I certainly understand that. But from a protest perspective, there's all kinds of things that people protest, and they have, I've seen many signs that I would consider to have obscene language on them, but it doesn't offend me because I know that they're trying to push forward whatever their cause is, no matter which side of the fence they're on. And I guess I just have an issue with, so they would have to come to the town and ask for, I don't know how you get a zoning certificate. Do you come to the town and say, hey, I need a zoning certificate because I want to show this sign that may have some obscene language to it? It just feels like government overreach to me.
Right, and again, these are specific for more permanent signs, not necessarily a protest sign. But you are right, and that is actually one of the sections that had been flagged again for re-review to make sure that we go through there and make sure that language is cleaned up a little bit, because again, that is more content-based regulation.
So we have a legal authority here. Does this generate any angst from your department?
Indeed it does.
And could you illuminate us with this angst?
So, what is offensive to one person may not be offensive to another person.
Right.
And we're allowed to be offensive to one another on our own property. I think you're okay with leaving obscene in there. I'll do some more checking on what the current state of the law is, but I would take out the immoral, the offensive. Those are all adjectives that, really go to the heart of free speech, right? So, yeah, I would.
I'm fine if the town is looking at that language more. My only request would be that we look at that language more and see if we can adjust the language.
Yes.
A protest sign, you don't need a certificate.
Correct.
So that would not come into play, this whole section would not come into play for a protest.
That's correct, but I think what Councilman Schofield was referring to is if, say, a downtown business wanted to put up a sign in their window or something along those lines that was separate from necessarily a organized protest, then maybe it wouldn't. Maybe it would fall under this category potentially. That's all. Mm-hmm. But like I said, we can massage that language. This is part of the language that's in our existing ordinance. So again, it was part of our review anyway. It was just a section that we probably just missed under our first pass at the amendments.
Okay. You had started to say something,
I
Councilman
was
Grassley?
going to make a motion to propose
Oh,
text
okay.
amendment to the planning commission for report recommendation.
Okay,
With the changes, or with the recommendations that we talked about.
Okay, great. So that's a first for the motion. Is there a second for the same?
Second.
Thank you. Councilman Grassley with the motion and Council President Carter with the second. Now that the motion has been seconded, does the council, any council member have further need to discuss or debate before I call for a vote? Okay, so hearing none.
So maybe just it's not a question or it's a
I
question.
didn't pause long enough,
It's
Councilman Schofield.
it's
I
mostly
apologize.
sorry, my introversion was coming.
Yes.
What's that?
So can this be more clear? And maybe it's very clear and I just didn't get it. But if I didn't get it, then would the public get it?
Right.
And maybe people would say yes. Maybe I'm just the one who's not understanding about what is considered something that has a zoning and something that doesn't have zoning. Maybe it just wasn't completely clear to me that protest signs weren't included in there.
Right. Well,
So I see temporary signs, and maybe that's every protest sign.
it would be. So a temporary sign is anything that would be displayed for less than, or 6 months or less, would be
Okay.
considered a temporary sign.
And I actually, my only feedback, which I failed to mention without your unintended pause, Councilman Schofield, is I'd like to see or determine if it's necessary for them to, for staff to look further into the definition as far as the time of a temporary sign. I actually think 6 months is too long, and I'm thinking about like campaign signs between primary and general election and such, especially in the downtown district, especially the ones that would be greater than the size that we're speaking of that only applies to a permanent sign. So I would like to perhaps reduce that factor by half, actually, to a 3 months. And even that is pushing it for my good taste, but.
And I'm sorry, is it in there, the time limit?
Yes.
It is,
120
okay, I
days.
must have missed it, I'm sorry.
It's under the definitions, as
Yeah.
Joe just
Well,
mentioned.
I guess I'm wondering under B, when and C, once we start talking about these conditions, that instead of periods after each number, that it be and. If I'm reading it correctly, and I think that might help clarify, like it's all of these conditions. It's not just like, look at some of them or a percent, you know.
I think it's any, if I'm not,
It's any,
it's
I think
any
it
of
is
them.
individual.
Yeah.
So they could be separate.
Right.
Yeah, they're really an or, not an and.
And to go back with what Mayor Link said, being the Historic District Liaison, I would also like to have the Planning Commission take a good look at the length of time that these signs are up, because there's a lot of signs that shouldn't be allowed for more than, or up to six months.
I would like to see 6 weeks for certain, to be honest. I mean, we can talk about the different types of temporary, or not, the different uses for a temporary sign. They're not all just campaign signs. And so maybe there is a necessity that I'm not thinking of off the top of my head that would indicate the need, a use that would indicate the need for it to be out for more than 3 months or more than 6 weeks or whatever, but 6 months is in my opinion, way too long.
So then 2 other questions I have in reference to this. One, is there a loophole here that someone could have a political sign that's a banner? Because that would be.
No, not according to the way this is
No.
written.
Not the answer. I read it.
No.
I mean, we're not trying to be here.
No, Councilman Schofield, the way it's written, that there's literally one location that's assigned the ability, if you will, or the permission to have a banner in place. And the
Okay.
size of that is even regulated.
Yeah, no, I saw this, I saw the size. What I guess I didn't see was that it was that specific about like what the use was for that banner sign.
And it is pretty specified.
Okay.
Yeah.
One spot only, and you have to have a permit to have that spot. So, for instance, the spot that we're talking about, for those of the public, are the banner across Main Street where
Right.
Promote events.
the promoting the events on Main Street, and that place is designated right now for the downtown Sykesville Connection, and do they have to submit a permit for their banner?
They do not, because the actual banner structure, the structure that holds the banner is not on any public property. It's actually attached to private property on either side. The only thing they need permission, or the only thing they needed permission to install that was permission from the state road to have something that hung over the street.
But they don't have to come to the town to say, hey, we want to have this banner up.
The DSC right now does not issue, or as far as I know, they do not issue any kind of, or submit for any kind of permit when they change their banner.
And this would require them to.
No.
I don't think that's in there, that they would have to require, that there is a
Signs
permit
permitted without
requirement.
zoning certificate.
Mm.
Number 3.
Okay.
Right, but this doesn't say that it needs to be only for like
Right.
art festivals and different things that the DSC does. I mean, I want them to be able to have their signs up when they want to have their signs up. I just don't want there to be any loose understanding of, hey, I can throw up, some sort of other sort of sign there. Because there's some other signs that I've thought about that I know that Lisa and I have talked about, where we put up signs celebrating our military, or we put up signs celebrating our seniors in high school as potential quote-unquote banners. I don't know if we'd call them banners, or
They might be called banners.
They might be called banners, right? Because they're, you've seen them in towns where they just kind of hang off of light posts. And I realize we have challenges with getting the light posts, so none of these things are easy.
But we could be looking at I've been looking at other places.
Sure.
On the town property to hang those.
Yeah.
But with that conversation being up, if there is nobody that needs to provide a permit to put a banner up there, me as homeowner Mary Smith, if I want to have a banner to congratulate my senior from high school, I have the right to do that, and there's no permit necessary.
Well, there's no permit necessary, but you would need to get permission from the people that own the structure that holds the banner, which right now
In this case, this location that you're speaking of,
is
not at home.
either the DSC or the private property owners that have the banner anchors, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
The mounting hardware.
Correct.
Okay.
That's why we don't have a permit process for it right
Gotcha.
now, is because it's not actually a town-owned facility.
That makes sense.
So are you saying anything that hangs across the street needs the permission of the owner of the street to hang it across?
The owner of the buildings where the anchors are.
And the state highway.
And state highway.
Right, and
Yeah,
because
but
it goes
it's in
over a
a,
state
but I'm
highway.
thinking of Halloween, where we actually had a hazard in a neighborhood where a fire truck couldn't get through because 2 houses across the street
Christmas.
Christmas.
On Brandenburg Circle.
Yes, hung from 2 houses,
Christmas lights. Yes.
Christmas lights, and the fire truck couldn't get through, and that would have been town.
No garroting Santa. It's really bad.
Well, we didn't give permission for that either.
Right, but I mean, does there need to be more awareness that if you're hanging something across a street?
Well, I mean, that should be implicit, but if it's noted or observed by someone who realizes that it's unsafe or wants to ask questions, they can give us a call. But I don't think that the ordinance should include or is necessary to include that.
Okay.
Because it's not a sign.
Well,
Christmas lights.
So if you remember, we all ignored it until after Christmas, and then it went down.
Well, to be
Never let
completely
that happen
honest,
again.
if there was a fire down the road, I doubt the fire truck would stop.
That's not gonna stop it.
Yeah, it's not gonna.
Twinkle lights that were hanging over.
All right.
Okay.
Like a chainsaw through
And
butter.
stop Santa. but-
Point of order. Point of order, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. So with the motion on the table, and do we have any further need for comment? I assume not. Now the point of order's been called. Hearing none, then the motion to, I now even forget what it was.
Send it to the
Refer to
planning.
the planning.
Thank you, for the proposed text amendment to be referred to the Planning Commission for report and recommendation prior to any formal action by the council. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. All right, so that motion passes unanimously. We move on to the third item of new business, which is to consider, discuss, and act on proposal for services by the DeVos Institute of Arts Management at the University of Maryland for the Apple Butter Warehouse. Again, just a brief couple lines here, and then I'll turn this over to Joe to give us some background. So this agenda item is very near and dear to my heart, and is our, as a council, first opportunity to discuss the beginning of a project that has been decades in the makings in the minds of many residents and elected officials at this table and those who have gone before us. So without further ado, this proposal for services is to conduct a feasibility study for the renovation and reuse of the apple butter warehouse in South Branch Park. And Joe, if you can provide some.
Sure. So again, this was one of the items that was identified during the council strategic planning retreat as one of the priorities for the town. Obviously, that priority moves up several notches when we were awarded a $2 million grant to do all of this work. But obviously, with any project of this significance, there needs to be a large amount of planning that goes into it before we just start spending money. So again, the DeVos Institute is obviously a well-respected arts institute. We had several people that identified this area as a potential arts district and potential uses for that building, but obviously none of us, or at least certainly not me, is qualified to say specifically how all that would work. So we do need some sort of professional help to I guess guide us through that entire process. They did submit, the DeVos Institute did submit their proposal, their proposed work. It is, I don't want to say a little on the pricey side, because honestly I don't know how much these things would typically cost with this level of professionalism and this, I guess, specific of a scope of work. But you know, sometimes it costs a little money to make money. So we are recommending moving forward because it is, again, grant funded. We do believe that just the level of expertise that the DeVos Institute is going to bring to the table is certainly worth the price tag, even though there is a little bit of I guess third-party funding or third-party work that has to happen, mainly like architecture and coming up with specific I guess site plan requirements. But again, I think this will put us on certainly the right path to make sure that building is reused in a way that is going to be sustainable over time, and I think that's the most important piece. So again, we are recommending approval of a not-to-exceed number of $125,000. That includes the $85,000 specifically for the DeVos work, plus it gives us a buffer to use a third-party architect to come up with what the area will look like. And then, according to the timeline there in the proposal, it should be a 6 to 9 month timeline for completion of the plan.
I assume everyone at the table had a chance to review the proposal at their convenience before the meeting. Are there any questions for staff regarding that proposal?
So hey Joe, I mean, this is kind of a large amount of money. I was wondering, was there any thought to RFP it, request for proposal, or is there either any other place in Maryland that does this kind of work with art, or nationally? Or?
Yeah, well, I mean, again, I'm sure there are plenty. Again, because this is, I guess, linked to the University of Maryland, we were comfortable moving forward with it. However, there's nothing that would prevent us from going through the RFP process. Because it is professional services, it is not required. So any proposal that comes forward, as long as it is approved by council, we can move forward with it. If it's construction, that's a completely different story. That does have to be bid, but professional services is kind of open for us to negotiate.
I had a similar question, but with our own professional services. Is the idea that the two groups would be teaming together with the A&E firm that we have?
Yes, that was the idea, that KCI Engineering would be helping us with any of the architecture or site plan work that would be needed for at least this process.
Yeah, and maybe wasn't clear to me, would we have a complete design that would be ready for bid when we're done?
It would not be shovel ready, so there would still be specific site planning requirements that we would still have to go through at the end of this.
Okay.
That they are willing to be a part of that process as well, inclusive of this proposal, like to kind of be a mediary, because it's part of the phase. It is one of the phases of their proposal, their proposed work plan, I should say.
Yeah, I had questions about like the civil part. I thought the civil part was going to be pretty
Separate.
costly. Yeah.
Yeah, it's separate, above and beyond.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I would second your concern or question. I was wondering why we didn't RFP it, and as much as I think, you know, I love art and I think that might be a great use, I worry that it narrows the option, that we're starting narrow as opposed to, you know, even an RFP proposal that opens it up to other people or other ideas for us to start
So
broader and bringing it down.
when we say arts, it's as broad as it can be with under the hood of arts. It's not visual versus performing versus they're going to look at all of that. And I know that from a strategic planning perspective, I thought we were on the same page about kind of designating that an arts, you know, that portion of things. And also we have to keep in mind that we have a memorandum of understanding with Howard County Recs and Park and their specifications of types of use for the space and for the reuse of any of the old structures on that parcel.
Can we see that? I mean, I guess I like the idea of casting a wider net just in the beginning. We might end up with them,
Mhm.
and it might be the only people interested, but I'd like at least I would, as I was reading it too, I would like an opportunity for more.
As per the proposal, they are actually suggesting that they will not limit it to purely art, but that they're aware of the engagement of the Hive Coalition and the idea of a makerspace and want to actually, you know, coordinate their efforts with that approach as well. And the idea here is to actually rule out certain things before they would rule in certain things. So I don't believe it's as restrictive as one might think, because they are the Arts Institute, so the Diverse Institute of Arts. So makerspace isn't ruled out, community space isn't ruled out, a combination of that with arts isn't ruled out.
I think it's for me more just the process of who's driving it, and like you said, we don't even know if the cost is within range of what other people might do, and like I said, we might end up with them. I was just thinking we would have more of a competitive process just to start to determine that this really is the best one versus, you know, having just one. So not disagreeing that they might not get us to where we want to.
I also will tell you that I was working closely with board members of the Carroll Arts Council, and their ED and I have met, and this is who they suggested we reach out to. That's how I actually was made aware of them. And so, yeah, I mean, it's you've got to start somewhere. I do understand your concern about the price tag, but I also know that given their products that they have actually and show on the proposal, the list of clients that they've had and the products that they have produced are quite lengthy and pretty impressive, and aren't just in Maryland but all over the country and intercontinentally.
So could Joe, I know you're a busy guy, but could you make a few phone calls, do the secret town manager handshake and find out if this is within scope, or like, wow, that's a great value, or man, that's 10 times what we're used to paying, and give us a feeling of pretty much what we expected, and then we'd know and, you know, make us feel better?
I think it's also, is there other people? You know, because like we've solicited this versus, you know, just we do an RFP process for other things, and just, I guess I don't see it as stalling the process too much to say,
I
like,
do.
you know, open it. Well, I hear that.
deal, actually.
I hear that, but I mean to say, you know, for 2 weeks, is there anyone else that, you know, just put it out there, we're looking.
It's not a 2-week process.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
a
No,
3-month
but-
process.
So is there a
You know.
time frame, I'm sorry, is there a time frame for the grant deadline in which we have to spend the money, or is it open-ended?
No, the grant, as a matter of fact, it's just the first $1 million of the
Right.
grant has to be spent within 5 years or
Correct.
something.
Okay, so,
So yeah, there's still plenty of time.
So
Phone calls are cheap. Just make a few and let us know, make us feel better.
I have a few comments, because I know that Howard County has gone through the charrette process way back when I first got involved 10, 12 years ago. And they did a very overview of that building And their overview and their charrette came back to, back then, it wasn't called a makerspace, it was called a multi-purpose space, arts and so forth. So that kind of has already been, I don't want to say established, but that's an overview of there's not really much else that you can do with it on a permanent basis. It has to be a broad overrise. I mean, how much did we pay for our comp plan? $100 and some thousand. And they're going to do a miniature version of a comp plan. They're going to do the 4 phases of it, $85,000. We've gone and we've had multiple RFPs on different other projects that have been within the 50, 75,000. So what they're giving us, I think, is a value with the credentials that the main person has. Brett Egan has provided. It's all in arts, but it's not specifically one specific art. It's a broad band of arts. So I think that he is a very open thinker, an open-minded thinker. And I understand that, hey, is $85,000 really what we should be paying for? Let's go make some phone calls. Let's go do an RFP. RFP process is a 3 to 6 month process because you have to write up your RFP. You have to give them time to do their vetting process. You have to have them bring it in. We have to review it. It's not a 2-week process. It's months. So if we're willing to take months, then okay, it's a body of voting. So just want to let you know where I came from.
Yeah, and we might end up with the same person. My thought was just, are we missing something by not going through a broader vetting process? And the number, I guess I'm not as worried about the number or the result as much as the process to get who we're going to work with,
But if they're going to do the same process, if they're going to do a public engagement, and that public engagement says that they want a circus, I mean, it doesn't matter what they as a company have done in the past. They're going to take what the community engagement and
yeah, I'm not arguing that. For me, it was just kind of what you were saying, that just that first step of the process,
It just seems like a lot of money to me to not have, I looked at the credentials, I agree with you, but it's like, I would just like something to compare it to. That's just, like, hey, this is what company X does, this is what company Y does. Let's look at it and see what the prices are. That's all. So.
Do I have a motion as recommended by staff to, let me look down here. To approve the proposal of services by the DeVos Institute of Arts Management with the total project cost not to exceed $125,000 to be paid from the Capital Grant Award.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? I'm sorry. Are we debating further? Okay.
I think it's important that I love the fact that we would want to look for a multi-use, art-focused sort of establishment in town. Honestly, I share some of the concerns that you're mentioning in reference to the RFP process and whether or not we can see a better bid. But based on my own experience outside of my council activities, this cost is in alignment with what I've seen on other major construction projects. That experience does go back a few years, and so I don't know exactly what that is now, but typically an AE firm costs about 10% of the total project. We haven't seen what the total project's going to be. There's quite a bit of civil work over there because I think that there's some need for figuring out how we're going to handle bathrooms and those sorts of things, and it's going to be a major cost that we're going to have to encounter as we navigate forward. But I really like the idea of using that space to move forward in this particular vein.
Yeah, I guess for me, it's just the first time we've seen something come forward with just a name versus even with services. I guess it's just that's why it's just surprising. For me, it felt like we're skipping a step. And again, to me, it's not the cost. It's more that process, I guess, as we,
Yeah.
so the clarity of like when do we RFP or when do we not, and then how do we determine that we're not, but
So this would be considered a professional service, much like our engagement with KCI for engineering.
Or our comp plan. Our comp plan, we didn't RFP that out. Joe just gave us recommendations with his experience. And that was before.
Auditors and.
Yeah.
We did actually RFP that.
Is there anything that we haven't? Like, I guess since I've been sitting here, like, it just seems like.
KCI, our engineering firm that we work with.
I'm resisting the urge just to look over at Alyssa.
Right, that's what I was going to say. Hiring our
We did not RFP
Our accountant.
legal services.
Our new accountant.
Mhm.
New accountants, we didn't RFP. We just reached out to several firms or our auditing firm. So again, there are other examples that, we did investigate other firms, but it wasn't a formal RFP process.
Okay. And so have we investigated anything besides this one?
For this particular type of proposal, no, we didn't.
I've spent about 7 months engaging in conversations with multiple members of the arts community, and this was where my research pointed me.
Okay.
So
there was some I guess there's some process behind it, and that's what I don't know. And that's
Sure.
what I'm asking about.
Yeah. Yes, and I have not engaged a conversation with another firm. However, I have engaged in many conversations with those in the community, in the arts community, and this is what we came up with. And I've been very pleased with the communication and the information sharing and the engagement I've had with these folks to date at no cost. So we have a motion and a second. I'm going to call for a vote. All in favor, and I'll read the motion again since it's been a bit. All in favor of approving the proposal of services by the DeVos Institute of Arts Management with the total project costs not to exceed $125,000 to be paid from the capital grant award. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay.
All opposed, nay.
Okay, so with that, the motion passes 6-1 and in favor. And that brings us to our fourth and final item of new business for us to consider, discuss, and act on 2022 paving contract award. The town's capital improvement plan identifies the resurfacing of, drumroll, Springfield Avenue east of Route 32, including the traffic circle, the access drive and parking areas around the Public Works building, repair work at the intersection of Warfield Avenue and Buttercup Road, and the restriping of the town's parking lot at Sykesville Station. A quick note on the financial impact, and that is that just for the public, the funding for these paving projects are always are this year, as they always are, part of and have been included in the fiscal year 2023 capital budget for paving in the amount equal to the estimated highway user revenue funding. Joe, any further background you'd like to share?
This was put out to bid back in July. Sorry, not January. We did receive 3 bids that are listed there in the staff report. The low bid, Gems Contracting, came in at $117,432, and CPE just above them at $124,264. So some of you may remember last year we had several bids that were either very close or even tied, and we did end up going with Gems Contracting. However, this particular year, because of the work that's being proposed, namely the repair work at Warfield Drive and Buttercup, a firm with CPE's background in, I guess, more road construction, more commercial road construction, is just a little bit more comforting to staff. So we are making a little bit of a change in that we're not selecting the low bid necessarily, but we are recommending CPE. And as most of you remember as well, CPE was has been our contractor who's done most of our repaving work in the past. So there's some familiarity there and some history that we're just a little more comfortable with, particularly with the
intensity of the repair. Yeah.
Correct.
You had recently, as of 6 o'clock this evening, had sent us a comment from a resident that was not, that wanted to provide us concerns with and the previous contractor was Gems.
That's correct.
Okay.
Any other questions from the council for staff? So the staff is recommending that we approve the paving contract to CPE Incorporated in the amount not to exceed $150,000 and authorize the mayor to sign all necessary documents to begin the paving project. And just to note that the not to exceed amount is being set higher than the bid in anticipation of other minor work that will be negotiated with the contractor as work commences. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Council President Carter. A second.
Second.
Councilman Leo Keenan with the second. Is there a need for further discussion or debate regarding the motion on the table? So with the motion to approve the paving contract to CPE Incorporated in the amount not to exceed $150,000 and authorize the mayor to sign all necessary documents to begin the paving projects, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Okay, so that motion passes unanimously. That brings us to the final section of our open meeting, which is announcements and reports. And I'll start with those. The next meeting is Monday, September 12th, 2022, right here in the council chambers. We have volunteer opportunities available on the Historic District Commission, Board of Zoning Appeals, and Police Auxiliary. Any of those interested in any of those positions, please email town@sykesville.net for more information about those and or any types of volunteering with the town. That brings us to staff updates. We'll look to Joe for an update regarding the livestock ordinance.
Do I have to?
Yes,
Please.
this won't go away.
No. So again, this is, I guess, the result of a yet another request from a resident who lives in a residential area, requesting the use of or the holding of chickens within their yard. Right now, the town zoning ordinance does prohibit the holding of livestock or any type of farm animal, as long as you can meet certain distance requirements from any other residential property line. So right now, our limiting language is basically anything that houses these animals has to be at least 200 feet from any neighboring residential property line. So obviously within any of our normal residential districts, you simply just can't meet that kind of requirement, so then therefore you can't have any of these animals. There has been some investigation into our current ordinance. Our distance requirements are a little bit higher than what you typically see in some other communities, but even if we were to reduce that to what others have, which usually it's around 50 feet or so from any property line, still within the residential districts, you wouldn't be able to comply because simply those lots are just not big enough to handle it. It would allow for chickens or other types of livestock animals to be on larger lots within the community. If you have an acre or maybe a little bit more, you should be able to comply. But right now, that is kind of the limiting factor. So again, even if we were to change it to bring our ordinance into more consistency with some of our neighboring communities, I'm not so sure within the residential areas you're going to see this massive onslaught of people holding chickens or some other type of farm animal. Llamas, whatever you want to call
Pterodactyls.
I'll be down with llamas. So thank you, Joe, for doing that review of the ordinance. I know everyone here at this table has been here long enough, even if it's just been 2 years coming up, that we've received this is not the first request. So that said, I actually, as a council, we need to determine whether or not further consideration is necessary that would rise this to the level of a formal discussion and for it to get on an agenda as an agenda item for a future meeting. And I actually would say that despite the limited number of properties that a reduction in a setback would afford the opportunity for chickens or other livestock, it, I think, is about the only way that we're going to be able to, I think, thoughtfully answer this question moving forward from any other interested neighbor or resident of ours. And I'd like to at least ask staff to tell us how many of those properties would be affected if it were to be cut back to what Joe is finding to be more of the normal or average setback in other municipalities of 50 feet. and then we can go from there. I don't know if anyone here agrees with at least
So-
that review.
So I do, and the reason I ask is because a lot of my neighbors do have a lot more acreage than other parts of the community. There's a conservation area that is right next to my property. Mine's still in the residential, but theirs is like 2, 3, 4 acres. And I'm aware that at least one of them has some chickens. And so it's one of these things that there's, they're not hurting anybody by being there is the sort of thing. Now, I don't fully understand what the 200-foot limitation is. Is it essentially, here's the chicken coop and it has to be 200 feet on any particular side of that, or is it?
From any residential property line, or
Okay.
any district, basically, if it borders another conservation district property, then that requirement doesn't comply. But see, so you're in a residential zone,
Yep.
neighboring a conservation zone, so it would have to be 200 feet from basically.
From my property. Yeah, okay. All right.
So before we invoke staff to do this, should we even see if the resident would benefit from the setback being
one who's
changed?
asking?
The one that's asking would not, I believe.
But they're not asking for, they're asking for a variance. They're aware that their property doesn't meet the criteria
With 200 feet, it
with
doesn't.
200 feet or even with 50 feet. But regardless of the setback, they're asking for a variance.
Well, they're asking if a variance request is an option,
Right.
And really, it's not, because anytime you go to look at a variance, there has to be some sort of hardship that the person is encountering, or some sort of special feature of the property that would give it some sort of different applicability to their particular situation instead of in townwide. Whereas just because you can't comply with the 200-foot requirement is not necessarily a hardship. That's actually part of the requirement. So
Okay.
you're basically just asking us to not enforce our ordinance on your property.
All right.
And I don't want it to come across like I've never measured how far away their chicken coop is. I have no idea if they're in compliance or not in
We're not
compliance.
going to look.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Says on a formal complaint, so.
Councilman Dyer had made a comment, and I do have to agree with him because I know other people in, not the town limits, but they're in Carroll County, where the requirement is a lot more lenient than ours are, and they butt up to a property that has chicken coops, and the chicken coops are loud. They're not the most pleasant, and if you have roosters, welcome to 4 o'clock in the morning when you've come home from night shift. So there's a lot of things to consider that I feel that our requirements are reasonable.
And just to hone in on that, we dealt with all those issues 6-8 years ago as a council. All those issues were raised as problems. Staff has enough work to do right now. I don't think they should be tasked with this job to evaluate every property in town to see if any of them meet this criteria if we reduced it. We've had this before. It's going to keep coming up and we just have to say no.
Well, right, so, but if the idea that the municipalities, those that do allow it, have a setback of 50 feet, I would be interested in knowing. I don't know that you would need to assess every single property in town. It would be a matter of, okay, well, we know how many feet are in a half acre, and we know how many feet are on a whole acre, and I don't think you have to go through pages to look at every property to determine how many of those that are. If I'm mistaken and this is going to be an overburdening request, I will withdraw it. Otherwise, honestly, it's shy of being able to say, okay, council, this would allow this many properties, this opportunity, and whether or not then, the decision is to still say, no, let's keep it 200, that's worthy. I think that the idea that we'd be able to say to the next person, and the one after that, and the one after that we have recently revisited this. This isn't something that is 8 to 10 years old since the last time. And, we considered it at 50 feet, but it's only going to affect 9 properties. And you're not on one of them. That would actually bode well, I think, if I were on the receiving end of this request that keeps coming up. But
So in that, basically you're saying, folks that are in the R20,000, those would probably be the only folks that would
That could
even get a
potentially-
shot at this, right?
Correct.
I'm perfectly fine with the Spanish word for this. No.
I mean, you do bring up a good point, Mayor, but I guess, I mean, I kind of agree with you. Like, okay, we looked into this, if we did change the setback to more lenient, it would only affect 20 properties. But I mean, how long would that take? I mean, that's kind of the thing.
How long would what take?
Well, again,
At it.
I think a quick review, and again, I'm not talking about doing any kind of deed research to verify everything, but you know, we can pull some of the plats that we have just to take a cursory look at, you know, what's existing there in Hawks Ridge, and you know, if you put a dot in the middle of the property, would they be able to comply? And I imagine the answer to most of those properties is simply going to be no. So we'll probably start with some of the bigger ones just to see, you know, how wide they actually are, to see if they could actually even comply with even a reduction to the 50-foot requirement. And you know, if we get going down the road and it's just, look, there's just not very many properties that are going to even be impacted if we changed it, then I'm happy to report that back to everybody.
Thank you.
And maybe to make it easier, you could say a percentage, if it's like 10% or less or something, because that would keep that review very quick.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, one other quick update before
Yes,
we
thank
move
you.
on to the treasurer's report. I know everybody's looking forward to seeing Craig. There was a question about the new development that's happening at Buttercup Road in Raincliff. It is an industrial site. It's an industrial building that's being put in there. As one of the approvals of that building going in, they did have to not only dedicate land, but actually make that pedestrian connection from where the sidewalk ends at Raincliff to Freedom Park.
That's awesome.
So as far as timing is when exactly that's going to be built, I do not know, but that is part of their approval process, is that connection has to be made.
Jeremiah says, finally.
Yes, and everybody in Raincliff.
Yeah, well, because he was their liaison for a while, and I'm sure he heard it every meeting, so, yeah. Thank you.
So again,
Thank
that's
you
it.
for investigating that, I really do appreciate it.
Okay, that brings...
Could you send a note over to the current Raincliff
Yes.
Homeowners Association, just to let them know to be expecting that, then they can stay on top of it.
Nice.
Thank you, sorry.
Good thought, Councilman Schofield. Now we get to see Craig in his pink.
Salmon.
Come on, oh, it is? No. It's not salmon, it's pink.
I would think it was pink, but
It's raw tuna, it's not salmon.
I'd have different shoes on if it was salmon, so just, you know.
Real men wear pink.
Anyway, welcome everybody. Good evening. At this time, I'd like to present the July 2022 Treasurer's Report, the first month of the new fiscal year, 23. Yay! Obviously, I don't know if everyone's had a chance. I kind of did a late Friday afternoon delivery of that. I apologize for that.
The fiscal year,
in terms of,
oh, you're okay.
yeah, I was gonna say, in terms of the July, I like presenting this month because it tends to be the easiest of the 12 months to present since there's not much going on. In terms of the revenue, obviously we're off to a pretty slow, what's he got there? A pretty slow start. And overall, the expenses right now exceed revenue by $133,000. That won't last very long because we have some good stuff already coming down the pike. Thank God for the town county agreement. They got us at the very bottom there. They got us some money for the 246. That would have been really bad, a tough start of the year. But luckily they came in, which they usually are, very cooperative. And also, in terms of the expenses, there was a couple one-offs. We decided to pay the workman's comp insurance premium fully right away, where in the past we've done an installment method, which you have to pay for that. I mean, it's not free to just do monthly payments. So it's going to save the town some money, and we have the cash, so we decided to go that route. Of course, it throws the expense all in 1 month, which kind of makes it a little one-sided, as well as we always have to pay for the general liability insurance up front for the fiscal year, which was like $43,000. So with those two expenses, that's like $85,000 right off the bat that was in there. So that didn't help matters. In terms of the glass half full side of the presentation, we did receive the first installment of the property taxes in an amount of $369,000, which would be where you see that zero at the top. It'll be $369 next month when we present, so that's already there. It's a good thing. Also, I don't know if you're all aware, and probably most of you are, that we did get the second installment of the ARPA funds, the 1.557, 711 monies. So that wraps that up. So now we have this amount of money to play with, not play with, to constructively come up with projects
Respond to the pandemic with.
to fight off the COVID problems. So we got that. In terms of just general comments, the audit for fiscal year 22 did begin. The auditors came in about 10 days ago to start their field work. I felt biased here. It went very well, and we have a good plan moving forward. They're real big on getting this audit done like in October, the end of October, which since I've been here would be, unbelievable record. But I don't know the prior type of, treasurers, what they did with the other CPA firms. But I mean, she's like huge on it. Like, there'll be no exceptions. We're just going to do this, Craig. And I'm like, okay, let's do this. So they'll be back like the end of September to really crunch, and
That's good news.
I'll be doing that. So yeah, it's a good thing. It's a win-win because then it's not overhanging in my head. I get this cloud all the time. I'll be able to relax, celebrate Christmas. So that'll be fun. So that's all I have for now. If you have any questions, I'll be willing to field them.
I have a question for Joe that ties into this. Area refuse service, how long are we going to need to continue using?
I think that's winding down now.
Okay.
So, we've been able to staff up in our public works department. Again, we were pretty short staffed there for a while, so we needed some assistance just to make sure that we didn't have any interruptions in service. But now I think we're only one down in public works.
And that person's going through, I think, screening process as we speak. So
I think you'll stop seeing the area refuse truck helping out in some of those routes shortly.
Thank you. That's it.
I have nothing for Craig. Anyone else?
He answered my questions earlier.
You all got my questions, so I'm good.
Excellent.
very good. All right.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
King. Next on the docket is our one and only Chief of Police, Chief Michael Spalding, for our public safety report. Please.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
It's always so tough to follow the always colorful and gregarious.
Yes, but he doesn't have the bling.
Yeah, but everybody wants to see, hear your information.
I care what you have to say. Just keep sending that money my way.
If you wore a salmon T-shirt underneath.
I honestly don't own one of those. Can't pull it off like Craig does. All right, let me get started here. We're going to cover the public safety report for actually a long period between July 4th and August 14th. So we're actually looking at about a month and 10 days. So it did make for a rather large report here, as you can tell. 1,239 total events during this period, and we had 33 incident reports as well. So very busy time for us. I would be more than happy to entertain any questions you have about any specific incidents, if you have any.
I don't know.
A few vandalisms, but I'm sure that they're going to settle down once the kids go back to school.
We hope so. We hope so.
I'm good.
So general, just a follow-up on the mental health first aid and kind of where we are process-wise.
Yeah, I know. Well,
So I
Lieutenant
actually just reached out again to Veronica, to the email that I sent you. I haven't had a chance to reach out to Katie yet,
Okay.
but I will do that first thing tomorrow. It's been a little hectic with some other things going on in my general work day, so I haven't forgotten yet. The update that I emailed you from Veronica was the latest thing, but I'll be on that first thing tomorrow.
Okay.
So I have a general question because I always ask the question, you know that. Do you see any trends that are starting to concern you, or is everything within bounds?
Within bounds. No trends that we're aware of here in town.
Okay. I mean, I see minor things like found property, which is fine. I mean, that's good.
Right.
But I just wanted to be sure you didn't see a curve starting to spike up and...
No.
Okay, good. Wonderful. Thank you.
So one comment that I have, and just a thank you, my wife and daughter were at the general convenience store right before some police converged on the scene due to one of the incident reports that's in this within the report. I just want to say thank you for the very timely response. It was obvious from their observation that the clerk was scared for whatever was going on. I'm not clear on what exactly was going on, and it doesn't really matter that I know, but appreciate police being able to respond as quickly as you do. Thanks.
That's certainly the value of having the number of officers that we have in such a small area. Is our response time should always be very minimal. Very minimal. I did want to point out, if there was no other questions, a couple of important dates. Our 13th annual Junior CSI program is coming once again, thankfully. September 10th, Lieutenant Kilgore will be there with me, as well as a cadre of other instructors that we've had in the past. So we're looking forward to, again, doing the one-day program instead of spreading it out over 4 weeks like we've done in the past. So Saturday, September 10th, we haven't had many applications so far, but we're hoping that will increase as we get closer to the beginning of school. Speaking of which, the beginning of school, as you all know, September 6th, we will have additional officers out, as well as auxiliary officers, patrolling the town, of course, assisting our crossing guards at the crosswalks, and interfacing with the school staff and personnel there to have a visible presence during the first day, and hopefully the first week or more of school. So we will be there for that. And our 2 recruits graduate on September 2nd from the Maryland Police Training Academy. It's going to be held at North Carroll, the old North Carroll High School. I think several of you are attending, and I know our recruits are very excited. They're down to their last 2 weeks, and have been fitted with their new uniforms and their dress uniforms, and they have their badge, but not in their presence. We had to deliver the badges over there, which will be pinned on them during the graduation. So very exciting times. Looking very much forward to that. And I will end with this. Some of you may have noted under the calls for service in community policing, there was references to an individual, a local individual who had been evicted from a downtown apartment. And I wanted to point out the phenomenal effort of several of our staff, Lieutenant Kilgore, Sergeant Kirkner, Officer Young, PFC Darby, I think even PFC Slayer. I think everybody interacted with this gentleman who was very much down and out. And to their credit, it wasn't just a matter of looking for violations of the law or pushing this person to another jurisdiction. It was about finding help for this gentleman. And they all asked those questions. They all reached out, made attempts to reach out to his family members to try to provide him with some support, all of which didn't come to fruition. But ultimately, due to our efforts and Lieutenant Kilgore stepping in, we were able to find this person a permanent shelter so that he could, be out of the elements. And I think it's just a phenomenal effort. It shows the compassion, the empathy that the officers have each and every day, and I'm very proud of them all.
I am too, and I actually was digging for an email while you were finishing up your report, Chief. I wanted to find the email from the Bureau Chief at the Carroll County Bureau of Aging and Disabilities, because again, it was the efforts of our police department that initiated this process, and I had learned that this gentleman was a veteran, and from there he was provided with the services. And as far as I know, having been connected with the Veteran Services Program is having a successful time of his reintegration situation. So and is accepting of those services. So that's always half the battle. Sure. Is accepting what's offered to them. And so when I had seen all of the gentleman's belongings on the street after being evicted, everyone panics, and of course Lieutenant Kilgore had already stepped in and taken care of things. So thank you.
Of course.
Thank you.
It was a great effort by all of them. By the way, it was Lieutenant Kirkner that actually first noticed.
It was? Okay.
Well, first noticed the belongings on the sidewalk and was able to put together the fact that that was just prior to our festival, and that would be a cause of concern, and made contact with the owner of the property and was able to get that out of the way, because that would have been an unsightly situation to have during our last festival. So yeah, it was a great effort by everyone.
Yeah, thank
Chief,
you.
have we met since the Sykesville night out?
Say again?
Have we met here since the Sykesville night out?
We have not.
We have not.
We have
So I
not.
just wanted to thank you for that night.
Went very well as well. And thank you to those that attended, well attended, and everybody seemed to enjoy themselves. And we gave away a lot of good stuff, a lot of goodies to the kids, and they got to see our Tesla up close and personal and sit in it. So it was a great night. Yeah,
Thank you for doing that.
Of course. Look forward to it every year.
Chief, before you step out, I want to make a comment that in today's world, we're always hearing negatives about the police and that they're very reluctant to do their job. I can't say that the opposite of our chief and the staff that you have. You're always out there community policing and doing just what you did with this unfortunate gentleman. And it's not something that we see in our community these days. And I'm just very blessed to be living in a community with you and the police. Thank you.
Very, very appreciative of that. Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Thanks for that.
Chief.
Thank you. That brings us to council committee reports. I'll start at my far left and ask Mark if he has anything to report regarding our, good Lord, our Cable Regulatory Commission and any.
No, the
other
meeting that was
reports.
was supposed to be held last week because several of us were out of jurisdiction. They decided to move it forward to October, so there was no meeting. I have nothing to report.
Okay, Councilman Schofield.
And I also have nothing to report. The Planning Commission was canceled for August, and so the next one's on September 6th at 7 p.m.
And Council President Carter.
HDC, Historic District Commission, meets tomorrow at 7 o'clock. We're doing it both via Zoom and in person. We have 2 applications, and we're also going to see if we can elect a commission, a chair. Thank you. Thank you.
Good, sure, thank you. And the next meeting?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow, that's what I thought you said.
Tomorrow
Okay.
at 7.
Great, thank you. Live, here.
And via Zoom.
And via Zoom. Okay, thank you.
Multimedia.
Yes.
Councilwoman Gurrow.
So a couple things. Parks and Rec. Next movie, September 10th, is School of Rock at Sunset. 5 p.m. We have 4 on the Floor with Overdrive playing prior to the concert. And we are also collecting non-perishable foods for Carroll County Food Sunday. And there's a note on the flyer, it is a PG-13 movie. We are also hosting the concerts in September and early October. So the September 10th with 4 on the Floor and Overdrive, September 17th with Here Till Sunday, and October 1st with Liberty Road. And those all start at 5 p.m. And wanted to share a success from Parks and Rec with the council as potentially something if we need it for something else. So there was a recommendation to try and increase attendance through Facebook.
Okay.
And there's a way in which you can, Facebook, I guess, and I'm a little sketchy on but they guarantee a certain number of views or hits.
Boost.
A boost, okay.
Yep.
And they knocked it out of the park. I mean, literally, they had, 150 at the next?
I think it's at 175 actually attended.
175 at the movie.
Which usually attendance is right around 100, so you almost double the.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. So, so creative kind of advertising on a limited budget and really got a huge bang for their buck in terms of that. And so expect to see that in future kind of advertisements for Park and Rec types of things. So they did a great job. They continue to do a great job with a very small group. So, definitely continue to encourage support and participation. And there'll be an upcoming, another cleanup coming up, I think so.
In the fall.
Yeah, the fall cleanup. So that's for Parks and Rec. And then I had a question about, for the council, of kind of something that I've noticed with the increased traffic over the summer at Miller Cooper because of Splash Pad, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But we then have increased in traffic. And we have amazing traffic guards. You mentioned the speed enforcement. I know that prior to me being on the council had years ago recommended speed cameras within the school zones to slow people down. We've had more, I mean, I was even in the park when there was an accident on that road because of just the weird stop signs and the curves, and with the school coming back up, we now are not just having kids there during school hour or coming to and from the school, but we have a lot more traffic, and with the pedestrian and the increased stuff over.
So you're speaking of the intersection of Cooper Drive and Springfield Avenue, that weird.
That and but you have right next to it Central,
Sure.
and then
And even that's
whatever the other one is coming out from the apartments, and
Yeah.
and it's all on a curve.
Yep.
So I just would like us to revisit at this point, if people are up for it, the speed cameras within the school zones, just for the safety of our kids. I think also once all of those townhouses are built, we have that pedestrian bridge to walk to Main Street, and I've seen a lot of people over the summer taking advantage of walking up and down Springfield for our different events we have, so just for safety wise, I think if I understand correctly, before the council passed it, there was a contention of it and it was put to a vote.
The council passed it, but then it was put up to referendum.
Right.
And town voted it down. Town residents voted it down.
I was
So-
like when I got here in 05, that was a while back.
I don't
Yeah.
think it ever went to referendum. I think we just canceled it.
No,
No, it was
It went to
voted.
referendum, it was voted down.
It was voted down, but I think enough time has passed, and from just the increased traffic on that road,
Yeah.
I'd like to see us revisit it in whatever fashion. If we want to put it on the ballot and prepare to do that, so that we just move to the vote because that's where it went to last time, or if we want to do something different. I don't know what our process
Can
is.
jump in, Chief. I mean, I'm sure you guys have put the trailer there multiple times to get us some data and some analytics. Maybe that's a great place to start.
Sure.
Like now, and then compare it to when school starts. And
In fact, we plan to have it out there for the beginning of school, as
Great.
well as doing speed enforcement on Springfield. So we could go back and pull all our data from the last several years, specifically for Springfield.
okay,
And we can continue to collect data, and that may help us justify
yes.
through the State Highway Administration to get approval to have a speed camera program in town.
Yeah,
We don't really even have a real defined, in my mind, I'm not picturing a crosswalk situation anywhere on Springfield at any of those places or near
no,
there.
there's just the one from the old. Whatever.
station or
And people don't stop, and
No.
I mean, like I was even walking there this morning, and it was just like,
Yeah.
it's just. So I just think I just think it's worth revisiting with the volume that we now have in that
Okay.
part of our community.
And I will tell you that just 2 weeks ago, spoke with the police department about some speeding on Springfield at the bottom of the hill that was expressed by a business owner at the bottom of the hill there. So, and that's a daily occurrence. So
Yeah, and I don't know if the cameras are only allowed in school zones. I know that's where I was just
It
gonna
has to be
ask.
within a certain radius of the school zone.
Those are the only options for the cameras.
Is
Okay.
it only during school hours, or is it,
No, they can run, I think, year round, and as long as it's within a school zone, because of summer programs and things of that nature. Yeah.
and our park is right there, as you said. So.
Yeah, and my memory from the last time it was there were three identified school zones. There was Sykesville Middle School, there was Stepping Stones, it was Obrek, and the top of Spout,
Yeah.
and then the Montessori School over on College and 32. So I don't know if we want to pursue those other ones as
No,
we
I think
start
those
to
are all
put
very
it together,
thoughtful
but
comments.
just very concerned
Yeah.
about.
I have my
I would
concerns on Spout.
caution, if you want to focus on a certain area, focus on that certain area. Don't expand it out too far, or it is not going to pass.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, my biggest concern, my first concern, I don't know about the Montessori school, I just know that's where there were 3 identified last time. I mean, for me, I have huge concerns around Miller Cooper and the kids and the park and the amount of foot traffic we're seeing more with the middle school. And I've heard of concerns on Obrook, but I don't know what, if it's worth revisiting that one or just staying, like you said, on the, in the Sykesville Middle School specific location. Anecdotally, that's where I've heard other concerns, is that area.
Thank you. Anything from Councilman Grassley?
Oh, I had a great vacation. Thanks for moving.
Thanks
Thanks for moving the meeting so I could be here tonight. I really appreciate it.
Is anything we can do for you, sir?
Yeah.
You live to serve.
Yes. How about Councilman Leo Keenan?
Yeah, for DSC, we don't have a board meeting this month, but from the DSC itself, there are some highlights. They had the garden community cleanup on July 29th. Farmers market is going well with new vendors still joining, and the market itself is still very popular and doing well. The golf tournament and Sippin' on Summer both hit their projected profit levels, so that's exciting. They are currently working on the Maiden Street Fall Fun Festival, which will be an alcohol-free and family-friendly community event, which will include the Merchants of Main Street with West Friendship Church and the town. This will be on October 22nd from noon to 4 p.m. And then, as usual, the DSC is applying for multiple grants, including the Carroll County Arts Council. We submitted an application to that for veteran street banners, as Councilman Schofield mentioned. Preparation of something called a SHINE application, strengthening the humanities investment in nonprofits for equity, supporting general operating costs, starting the Main Street Improvement Program again for FY23. And as everybody knows, Governor Hogan was here earlier this month, but he submitted a letter of support for one of our applications for the Great America Main Street Award, and that application was submitted at the beginning of this month to the National Main Street Center. So I'll update you when those come through.
Leo, on Hogan's visit, when I had a short section where I ended up walking next to him, and Al, you were next to me, and we were talking about the percentage of women-owned businesses on Main Street, which he was not aware of, but seemed very interested in. So I wasn't sure if there was maybe something more we could do to.
83%.
I said 80.
I was thinking it was 90.
So we gave him the 80 to 90 range.
Fair.
But I think
Impressive.
it's very impressive, and I just don't know if there's a way, as you're mentioning grants, but also recognition, if there is something that we can do to really recognize that.
Sure.
I think it's a unique feature of our Main Street and huge.
Good point. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Councilman Keenan, you did not mention, you did mention a new collaborative for Fall Fest on October 22nd, I believe.
Right.
Are we still having trick-or-treating on Main Street this year?
That's a Main Street business.
Okay,
venture
that's not
as
through
opposed to
DSC.
So
Okay.
I'm sure they will be, and that'll be announced, but that's something that the businesses do.
If we can get the newsletter out on time, it'll be in there.
Okay.
All right?
Sounds good.
All newsletter.
I'm not even thinking that far ahead.
I feel like we just got the summer one out.
Thanksgiving. You did.
Oh, we did.
It's a very popular event, so I wasn't sure if that was still in the making.
Yeah, the Main Street Merchants Association handles that.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Thank you, thank you. So that is everything as far as I know it to be. So hearing no more comments or updates, I'm going to ask for a motion to go into recess. But before I do, please let me read the fact that we are going into closed session shortly. So the meeting itself is proposed to be closed pursuant to the general provisions article of the Annotated Code of Maryland, Section 3-305B, 7, to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice on a legal matter. And this evening, that topic will be to consult with legal counsel regarding the Warfield sales contract. May I have a motion for a 5-minute recess before returning to open session briefly so we can go into closed?
Motion for recess.
Thank
5
you.
minutes. Second.
Great, so motion by Councilman Grassley, seconded by Councilman Dyer. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed to this recess? Okay, we are now in a 5-minute recess. 4 minutes.